Hi, welcome to Computing Foundations, a channel for beginners who want to learn about computers, programming, and the math, science, and art behind this world-changing field. I'm Josh Kilpatrick, a retired software engineer. This video is a review of the solution to the number 13, Program 13 challenge. In this challenge, you were asked to write a phone book program. So in the GitHub repository, the solution to the program that I've written is available, and I'm just going to walk through the basics of it with you here. So let's get started, as always, with the main program, the main function. So I begin the main function by setting up 3 multidimensional arrays. And each of these arrays has, as its first dimension, the maximum number of entries that I plan to support, which I've defined earlier as 100. I will have 100 entries, so that means I can have 100 first names, 100 last names, 100 phone numbers. The second dimension of the character array is the maximum allowed length of the first name, the maximum allowed length of the last name, the maximum allowed length of a phone number. So in this way, I've defined 3 multidimensional arrays that are going to be used to hold arrays of characters, that is, strings of characters. So the way that I start my program up is I print out the commands to the user. They can press A to add, D to display, Q to quit. And then I scan the keyboard for whatever character they're going to enter. You might notice that just after this scan, I do a get char. This is a function from the standard IO library, and the reason I'm calling it is if you read the description of the reference for the scanf function, it says, when scanning for a character, it receives the character and then returns. The user usually is going to enter a character and press enter. So the problem is, this particular call to scanf, it read the user's character from the keyboard, but it left a \n, a new line, in the input buffer. And we don't want that to be sitting in the input buffer because it could create confusion when we try to get the next set of data from the user. So we just do a get char to remove that new line from the input buffer and continue with the program. So now we have an empty input buffer. Next, I set up a switch statement. This is a great option for a situation like this, where I have a program where users are going to enter several different options. In the future, I might add other options. A switch statement is a great way to set something like this up in your program. So for each possible case, they can either do the add operation, which is an A, the display operation, which is a D, or the quit operation, which is a Q. Each of these are constants that I've defined at the top of the file to hold the options. If the user clicks add, I will enter into the add function, and the add function will return the new size of the phone book, and I'll set that into my size variable, which is scoped here in the main function. If they call display, I'm going to call print phone book. And for each of these 2 functions, I pass in all 3 of my multi-dimensional arrays plus a size number that describes how large is the phone book right now, how many entries are in the phone book, because I can only take up to 100. Okay, let's take a look at the add function. So we pass in the array of first names, last names, and phone numbers because we want to directly add the new entry to those 3 arrays. Then we prompt the user, enter your first name. Then we use the fgetS function, which I reviewed in one of the last videos here, to get whatever string the user enters from the screen. Then we search to make sure that that line of text that we read from the screen contains the new line character. I described to you why I do this in the code comments, and rather than going over this again, I'll just leave you to read those comments. But we need to make sure that we received everything the user typed in. We only have space for 16 things, and the user may have typed in more than 16 characters. So we make sure that the new line can be found, and then we overwrite the new line with the end of string null character terminator, because we want to remove this new line. We don't want it to stay in our data. Otherwise, every time I print the first name, it's going to print the first name and a return. I don't want that. I just want to store the first name, so I'm getting rid of the return at the end. I do the same thing for last name and the same thing for enter phone number. You might also notice in each of these this special else statement. So this is a little tricky. Again, I've described it in the comments, but if the user enters in more characters than I can store in my array, so the first name can only be 16 characters, if they enter 17 characters, what's going to happen is fgetS is only going to receive the number of characters that we are allowed to store in the array. That is the first name length. It won't go any longer than first name length. Whatever else is left over will be left on the input buffer. And if I'm not careful, that'll get picked up by the next fgetS. So before I call fgetS again, I want to clear the input buffer. The way that I do that is I just call getChar until I reach the new line where the user hit the return. And I'm just going to throw those extra characters away. They were extra characters the user entered in that aren't supported by this program because I can't receive any more than 16 characters for the first name. I do the same thing on each of these rows just to make sure that if the user entered in more than I can hold, it won't mess up my program. I need to clear out that input buffer. Now let's take a look at the print phone book. This is a little simpler. All I need to do is loop through the size of the phone book, and then for each row of the phone book, I am going to concatenate into a new character array, into a new string. I'm going to concatenate the first name, a space, and the last name. I want to put the first name and last name together into one string. Now, this isn't strictly necessary. You could have just printed first name and last name separately in the printf function. But I thought it was a great way to show you an example of how to use the string cat function to take multiple strings and put them together. So I put two strings together into the name function. And then finally, I call printf, and I print out the name, which is the concatenated first name and last name in a slot of 20 characters wide. And then I print out the phone number in a slot of 14 characters wide. I should actually change this. I've just realized I have a little bug in my program because we allow the phone number to be up to 16 characters long. So I want to make sure my slot is 16 characters wide where I can print that, just in case somebody uses all those digits in their phone number. All right, that's the overview of how this challenge got solved. I encourage you, if you weren't able to come up with a solution on your own, study my solution and see what you can learn. And we'll see you in the next video.